And now for part 3 of campaigning and elections. Now it's the fun part to take a look at actual propaganda and propaganda techniques. So for this screencast, if you'll continue with that lovely list of vocabulary words, handwriting the highlighted terms, including a short definition. So a quick reminder from the part 2 screencast, did you get all of these terms from part 2 really quickly? If you haven't gotten part 1 or part 2, you'll need to go back and take a look at those, get those terms and definitions. So take a look really quickly at step 5. So now that the candidates, we've talked about candidates that have started to campaign and they are looking for money and the things that they can and cannot do in terms of campaign finance. They are in earnest beginning to campaign. Now is the time also in October, right before the general elections, that things are really beginning to crank up. I'm sure you're seeing a lot of the advertisements, particularly with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and all the lovely advertisements that we're seeing there. So some of the things that I want us to pay attention to as we're watching those advertisements, as you're getting those in the mail. One of the most popular things that candidates will do in terms of a propaganda technique is that they will seek endorsements, and that's up right here at the top. So they'll seek an endorsement as propaganda, and there's the term propaganda. It's one of your key terms. Propaganda, of course, is using some sort of strategy to try to influence you to do something, to, in this particular case, vote for them. So this would be as an endorsement trying to say, you know, I don't know, to say Oprah Winfrey is going to support Hillary Clinton or something like that. Candidates will also canvass for votes. That doesn't mean that they get on canvas and they submit assignments. That means that they go door to door and they will literally knock on your door in some neighborhoods and talk to you about voting. That's usually not in our neighborhoods, although I've heard it done before. They will typically use the telephone, and they will call or they will robocall you, and they will ask how you're going to vote, or they will try to persuade you in some way, and they'll try to get, in particular, undecided voters to choose them as the candidate. So the propaganda techniques, there's that term again, are going to try to persuade the electorate or voters. There's another term, we've seen that before, to vote for them. Some of the other strategies that are propaganda techniques that are fun to watch for and fun to identify. One of them is called glittering generalities because, you know, all that glitters isn't gold. Well, those are emotionally appealing words like patriotism, family values, and the American way. These are words that sound good, but their meaning is really too general. Like, my candidate supports American family values. Oh, really? Which American family? Like the Osbournes? Because no, the Kardashians, not my family. So they sound really good, but they really are kind of empty and meaningless. But that's one of the techniques that politicians will use to try to influence you to make their campaign sound great. Some other techniques, the bandwagon approach. Get on the bandwagon. Everybody is doing it, so you might as well too. Everybody's going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Don't waste your vote and vote for that other guy. Vote for Hillary Clinton. Get on the bandwagon and vote for Donald J. Trump, because everybody's going to do it. Another bandwagon technique would be like polling, because some media outlets will use specific polling techniques to make it look like everybody's going to vote for Hillary Clinton or everybody's going to vote for Donald Trump. So why waste your vote and vote for the other person? They also use stacked cards. In other words, the cards are stacked against you. It's kind of like that idea where you only see one side of the cards. For example, if you're playing cards with someone, you only see the face. You don't see the other side of the card. So in terms of using this as a propaganda technique, they're only going to show the positives of their campaign. They're not going to show the negatives. For example, if they wanted to use nuclear energy, as an alternative to oil, they're going to show all of the positives to nuclear energy, but they would never show what would happen if a nuclear power plant would, say, melt down. That would be terrible, because they don't want to show you the bad stuff. If they would use just plain folks as a propaganda technique, it shows a candidate acting just like everybody else. One of my favorite ones is, you know, to see the Clintons going into, like, McDonald's, or to see Donald Trump just in a ball cap. I mean, you know, just like everybody else, and they are blending into America, even though they're really not the typical average person in terms of like economic or socioeconomic status. those propaganda techniques kind of put them on everybody else's level. Name calling, of course, or mudslinging in this particular case, is one of the favorites of this particular election, not just the presidency, but a lot of other races as well. But name calling is the way to look at opponent in a negative way, and it doesn't have to be really just calling them a name, but referring to them in a negative light. It could be something like, my opponent is not does not challenge terrorists, or is soft on crime, something like that, where it makes them look bad and look negative. It's a negative campaign tactic. Of course, they'll use symbols, things that are emotionally appealing, to get you on board with their campaign, like flying an American flag and babies and fireworks and things that look great and make us take another look at the television, or even sometimes not just symbols, but if we're listening to things that sound great to us. And so those are specific types of techniques that we'll take a look at, and we'll also see in some advertisements that we'll watch in class. So let's move on to step 6, and let's actually get to this general election after all of the campaign is over and done. And on November the 8th, that election is going to take place not just for the presidency, but for all of the other candidates running for office too. So what you're going to do, if you're a citizen who's registered to vote, you're going to go to your polling place. Now, elections are conducted by each state, and hopefully you remember that from your readings, like states conduct that. That's called a reserved power. So there are different polling places, and a polling place, again, is where you go to vote. Like Concord High School is a polling place. And if a citizen is going to be able to vote, and we'll talk about this more in class, and we'll write down a list more specifically, you have to be 18 and registered to vote. You have to be a resident of North Carolina, and in this state you have to be a resident for 30 days, and you actually have to be registered 25 days before the election. You have to be a U.S. citizen, and of course, again, those registered voters are called the electorate. That's that bold term that we see right here. I didn't highlight that because we already have that in a previous vocabulary term. Citizens should be aware of their voting district and the candidates of whom they can vote for. You can go to the State Board of Elections, and we'll do that in class, and we'll take a look at the list of candidates that are running for office. The district is divided into precincts, which a precinct, again, is a division of a voting district, and then even smaller polling places. Again, Concord High School is a polling place. So the two terms here that I'd like for you to be aware of is a precinct and a polling place. So a precinct is a larger division of a voting district, and a polling place is the actual building in which you will go to vote, like Concord High School. And just to quickly show you an example of a voter registration application, and I'd like to go over this a little more in depth in class because there's some interesting things to point out about these, but you would fill out like your name and your address. You would fill out your age. You'd have to also fill out some identifying information like some social security information or driver's license number, for example. This is where you could register for a political party. It's right here as a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. If you don't put anything, you're unaffiliated. And then you have to sign, because this is an actual serious document, that you are not lying on this particular form. And again, we'll take a look at these in class and go over what parts of voter registration are incredibly significant for its specific meaning in terms of having to be registered and be a resident of the state. So once you're, again, registered, and it's you have to be registered in North Carolina 25 days before the election, it's time for you to vote on your ballot. Well, now, there are different kinds of ballots. Let's say that you know you're going to be out of town on November the 8th. You're going to be in Europe. You could actually vote right here absentee. You can vote on an absentee ballot. All you have to do is request one, and the Board of Elections will mail you one, and you can fill it out and you can send it back. Well, let's just say you don't want to go to the polls on November the 8th because you don't want to wait in line. You can request an absentee ballot, fill it out, and send it back. You could vote early. So early voting is getting underway currently, and so you could actually go ahead and go vote if you already know who you want to vote for. You go to the Board of Elections, but it's a one-shot deal. You can't vote for the president now and go back and vote for other people later or change your mind. So once you voted, you're done. Other ballots, types of ballots are paper ballots, mechanical lever ballots where you literally pull a lever. Those are really weird and they're not used anymore. Punch cards, again, not used so much. Scantrons are typically what's used today, and we'll take a look at some of these examples. A butterfly ballot, and I want to call attention to that particular kind of ballot because this is the type that caused confusion in Florida in the 2000 election between Bush and Gore. And in that particular election, that's where Al Gore won more votes in the popular vote for the presidency, but George Bush became the president because he won more electoral votes than Al Gore. So again, a real quick example of a butterfly ballot. This is one of the examples from, again, in Florida. I don't know if you can really see this too well, but it's November the 7th of 2000. And so right here down the middle, what happens is that you would put a little card in through the top, and it has little perforations where you would take a little metal stick and you would punch through those little holes right there to indicate your vote. It's kind of a weird thing to do, but then those holes that are punched out in that little card behind this little booklet that you see here would be read by a machine, and that's how it tallied your vote. But people got really confused about which hole to punch through based on, exactly where that hole was. So, for example, if you wanted to vote for the Reform candidate, which one of these would you vote for? If you wanted to vote for the Democrat, would you vote for the second one or the third one or which one? So, people had some trouble reading that. You might think that's a little silly, but people who were, say, first-time voters or were really nervous, or maybe older people who couldn't read well, they had a really difficult time understanding the butterfly ballot. So they had a really tough time in Florida trying to go back, and they had to hand count every single one of those ballots. Today we use something a little more like this. I don't know if the quality's too good, but there are little circles right here beside the particular names of the candidates, and you literally just bubble it in. It's like having a bubble sheet. And then you put it in the little machine at your polling place, and it reads it, just like a Scantron. And then the last thing would be an exit poll. This is our last step. When you're leaving your polling place, you might have some people there who are asking you who you voted for to get a random sample of people. And that way the media can report who's winning. Now, you don't have to answer. I want you to understand that. You don't have to tell a single person who you voted for, because voting in America is done by secret ballot. When you go to your polling place, you tell them who you are, you get your ballot, you go to a little spot where it's kind of secretive, it's like almost like a little booth, you do your Scantron sheet, you slide it in the machine, and you don't have to tell anyone who you voted for. The only thing that's public is basically your voter registration and the fact that you voted or you did not vote in a particular election, and that's it. And finally, this is just a reminder of the vocabulary terms from Part 3 of the screencast, wanting to make sure that you got all of the terms there, a quick list, a reminder of the propaganda techniques that are listed there, just to kind of give you an idea of all of the propaganda techniques that we've talked about. And we'll review those again in class and take a look at some examples with some really funny and interesting advertisements. Again, keep in mind that you're going to submit the vocabulary list of terms in class, hard copy, to Ms. Drake.